A loving heart is the beginning of all knowledge. Permanence, perseverance and persistence in spite of all obstacles, discouragements, and impossibilities, it is this, that in all things distinguishes the strong soul from the weak. Wondrous is the strength of cheerfulness, and its power of endurance. The cheerful man will do more in the same time, will do it better, will preserve it longer, than the sad or sullen. Love is not altogether a delirium, yet it has many points in common therewith. He who has health, has hope, and he who has hope, has everything. Not what I have, but what I do is my kingdom. Egotism is the source and summary of all faults and miseries. In every phenomenon the beginning remains always the most notable moment. Speech is human, silence is divine, yet also brutish and dead, therefore we must learn both arts. Good breeding differs, if at all, from high breeding only as it gracefully remembers the rights of others, rather than gracefully insists on its own rights. Make yourself an honest man, and then you may be sure there is one less rascal in the world. I don't like to talk much with people who always agree with me. It is amusing to coquette with an echo for a little while, but one soon tires of it. Talk that does not end in any kind of action is better suppressed altogether. This world, after all our science and sciences, is still a miracle, wonderful, inscrutable, magical and more, to whosoever will think of it. Silence is as deep as eternity, speech as shallow as time. I've got a great ambition to die of exhaustion rather than boredom. A man lives by believing something, not by debating and arguing about many things. Long stormy springtime, wet contentious April, winter chilling the lap of very May, but at length the season of summer does come. The old cathedrals are good, but the great blue dome that hangs over everything is better. It is a strange trade that of advocacy. Your intellect, your highest heavenly gift, is hung up in the shop window like a loaded pistol for sale. Everywhere the human soul stands between a hemisphere of light and another of darkness, on the confines of the two everlasting empires, necessity and free will. No ghost was ever seen by two pair of eyes. When the oak is felled the whole forest echoes with it fall, but 100 acorns are sown in silence by an unnoticed breeze. Adversity is the diamond dust heaven polishes its jewels with. There are good and bad times, but our mood changes more often than our fortune. Isolation is the sum total of wretchedness to a man. Our main business is not to see what lies dimly at a distance, but to do what lies clearly at hand. A man willing to work, and unable to find work, is perhaps the saddest sight that fortune's inequality exhibits under this sun. If there be no enemy, there's no fight. If no fight, no victory, and if no victory, there is no crown. The work an unknown good man has done is like a vein of water flowing hidden underground, secretly making the ground green. Nothing stops the man who desires to achieve. Every obstacle is simply a course to develop his achievement muscle. It's a strengthening of his powers of accomplishment. To us also, through every star, through every blade of grass, is not God made visible if we will open our minds and our eyes. Conviction is worthless unless it is converted into conduct. It were a real increase of human happiness, could all young men from the age of 19 be covered under barrels, or rendered otherwise invisible, and there left to follow their lawful studies and callings, till they emerged, sadder and wiser, at the age of 25. Teach a parrot the terms supply and demand, and you've got an economist. The block of granite which was an obstacle in the pathway of the weak, became a stepping stone in the pathway of the strong. Music is well said to be the speech of angels. If you look deep enough you will see music, the heart of nature being everywhere music. Under all speech that is good for anything there lies a silence that is better. Silence is deep as eternity, speech is shallow as time. The merit of originality is not novelty, it is sincerity. What we become depends on what we read after all of the professors have finished with us. The greatest university of all is a collection of books. A man without a goal is like a ship without a rudder. A well-written life is almost as rare as a well-spent one. If you are ever in doubt as to whether to kiss a pretty girl, always give her the benefit of the doubt. Clever men are good, but they are not the best. No great man lives in vain. The history of the world is but the biography of great men. Nothing that was worthy in the past departs, no truth or goodness realized by man ever dies, or can die. Woe to him that claims obedience when it is not due, woe to him that refuses it when it is. The true university of these days is a collection of books. Thought once awakened does not again slumber, unfolds itself into a system of thought, grows, in man after man, generation after generation, till its full stature is reached, and such system of thought can grow no farther, but must give place to another. To reform a world, to reform a nation, no wise man will undertake, and all but foolish men know, that the only solid, though a far slower reformation, is what each begins and perfects on himself. War is a quarrel between two thieves too cowardly to fight their own battle. The cut of a garment speaks of intellect and talent and the color of temperament and heart. If what you have done is unjust, you have not succeeded. Imperfection clings to a person, and if they wait till they are brushed off entirely, they would spin forever on their axis, advancing nowhere. Love is the only game that is not called on account of darkness. Humor has justly been regarded as the finest perfection of poetic genius. Silence is the element in which great things fashion themselves together. Secrecy is the element of all goodness, even virtue, even beauty is mysterious. A laugh, to be joyous, must flow from a joyous heart, for without kindness, there can be no true joy. Old age is not a matter for sorrow. It is matter for thanks if we have left our work done behind us. This world, after all our science and sciences, is still a miracle wonderful, inscrutable, magical and more, to whosoever will think of it. Not brute force but only persuasion and faith are the kings of this world. The first duty of man is to conquer fear. He must get rid of it, he cannot act till then. Foolish men imagine that because judgment for an evil thing is delayed, there is no justice, but only accident here below. Judgment for an evil thing is many times delayed some day or two, some century or two, but it is sure as life, it is sure as death. The three great elements of modern civilization, gunpowder, printing, and the Protestant religion. No person is important enough to make me angry. It is the heart always that sees, before the head can see. No sadder proof can be given by a man of his own littleness than disbelief in great men. Of all acts of man repentance is the most divine. The greatest of all faults is to be conscious of none. Reform is not pleasant, but grievous. No person can reform themselves without suffering and hard work, how much less a nation. Man is a tool-using animal. Without tools he is nothing, with tools he is all. Silence is the element in which great things fashion themselves together, that at length they may emerge, full-formed and majestic, into the delight of life, which they are thenceforth to rule. Nothing is more terrible than activity without insight. A man's felicity consists not in the outward and visible blessing of fortune, but in the inward and unseen perfections and riches of the mind. Show me the man you honor, and I will know what kind of man you are. Man's unhappiness, as I construe, comes of his greatness. It is because there is an infinite in him, which with all his cunning he cannot quite bury under the finite. One must verify or expel his doubts, and convert them into the certainty of yes or a no. The world is a republic of mediocrities, and always was. Laughter is one of the very privileges of reason, being confined to the human species. The real use of gunpowder is to make all men tall. No iron chain, or outward force of any kind, can ever compel the soul of a person to believe or to disbelieve. Blessed is he who has found his work, let him ask no other blessedness. Men seldom, or rather never for a length of time and deliberately, rebel against anything that does not deserve rebelling against. Sarcasm I now see to be, in general, the language of the devil, for which reason I have long since as good as renounced it. Everywhere in life, the true question is not what we gain, but what we do. Genius is an infinite capacity for taking pains. Culture is the process by which a person becomes all that they were created capable of being. A man cannot make a pair of shoes rightly unless he do it in a devout manner. Show me the person you honor, for I know better by that the kind of person you are. For you show me what your idea of humanity is. The man of life upright has a guiltless heart, free from all dishonest deeds or thought of vanity. Doubt, of whatever kind, can be ended by action alone. Conviction never so excellent, is worthless until it converts itself into conduct. I don't pretend to understand the universe, it's a great deal bigger than I am. It is a vain hope to make people happy by politics. For all right judgment of any man or things it is useful, nay, essential, to see his good qualities before pronouncing on his bad. If you do not wish a man to do a thing, you had better get him to talk about it, for the more men talk, the more likely they are to do nothing else. After all manner of professors have done their best for us, the place we are to get knowledge is in books. The spiritual is the parent of the practical. Narrative is linear, but action has breadth and depth as well as height and is solid. No man who has once heartily and wholly laughed can be altogether irreclaimably bad. I grow daily to honor facts more and more, and theory less and less. A fact, it seems to me, is a great thing, a sentence printed, if not by God, then at least by the devil. History shows that the majority of people that have done anything great have passed their youth in seclusion. Originality is a thing we constantly clamor for, and constantly quarrel with. No amount of ability is of the slightest avail without honor. All that mankind has done, thought or been, it is lying as in magic preservation in the pages of books. Oh, give us the man who sings at his work. The courage we desire and prize is not the courage to die decently, but to live manfully. The outer passes away, the innermost is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Let each become all that he was created capable of being. The eye sees what it brings the power to see. There is a great discovery still to be made in literature, that of paying literary men by the quantity they do not write. When new turns of behavior cease to appear in the life of the individual, its behavior ceases to be intelligent. Men do less than they ought, unless they do all that they can. Science must have originated in the feeling that something was wrong. The difference between Socrates and Jesus. The great conscious and the immeasurably great unconscious. Every day that is born into the world comes like a burst of music and rings the whole day through, and you make of it a dance, a dirge, or a life march, as you will. True humor springs not more from the head than from the heart. It is not contempt, its essence is love. It issues not in laughter, but in still smiles, which lie far deeper. For, if a good speaker, never so eloquent, does not see into the fact, and is not speaking the truth of that, is there a more horrid kind of object in creation? A person who is gifted sees the essential point and leaves the rest as surplus. The greatest of faults, I should say, is to be conscious of none. Do the duty which lies nearest to you, the second duty will then become clearer. In the long run every government is the exact symbol of its people, with their wisdom and unwisdom, we have to say, like people like government. No man lives without jostling and being jostled. In all ways he has to elbow himself through the world, giving and receiving offense. I do not believe in the collective wisdom of individual ignorance. If an eloquent speaker speak not the truth, Is there a more horrid kind of object in creation? The end of man is action, and not thought, though it be of the noblest. Every new opinion, at its starting, is precisely in a minority of one. He who could foresee affairs 3 days in advance would be rich for thousands of years. Youth is to all the glad season of life, but often only by what it hopes, not by what it attains, or what it escapes. Imagination is a poor matter when it has to part company with understanding. In books lies the soul of the whole pastime. Man is, properly speaking, based upon hope. He has no other possession but hope. This world of his is emphatically the place of hope. The only happiness a brave person ever troubles themselves in asking about, is happiness enough to get their work done. What you see, but can't see over is as good as infinite. Writing is a dreadful labor, yet not so dreadful as idleness. Wonderful force of public opinion. We must act and walk in all points as it prescribes, follow the traffic it bids us, realize the sum of money, the degree of influence it expects of us, or we shall be lightly esteemed. Certain mouthfuls of articulate wind will be blown at us, and this what mortal courage confront. What we might call, by way of eminence, the dismal science. What we become depends on what we read after all the professors have finished with us. The greatest university of all is the collection of books. When the oak is felled, the whole forest echoes with its fall, but 100 acorns are sown in silence by an unnoticed breeze. Man is a tool-using animal. Nowhere do you find him without tools. Without tools he is nothing, with tools he is all. Life is a little gleam of time between two eternities. Macaulay is well for a while, but one wouldn't live under Niagara. Love is not altogether yet it has many points in common therewith. Show me the man you honor, and I will know what kind of man you are, for it shows me what your ideal of manhood is and what kind of man you long to be. Men's hearts ought not to be set against one another, but set with one another, and all against evil only. If a book comes from the heart, it will contrive to reach other hearts. All art and author craft are of small account to that. For the superior morality, of which we hear so much, we too would desire to be thankful. At the same time, it were but blindness to deny that this superior morality is properly rather an inferior criminality, produced not by greater love of virtue, but by greater perfection of police, and of that far subtler and stronger police, called public opinion. If time is precious, no book that will not improve by repeated reading deserves to be read at all. If the cut of the costume indicates intellect and talent, then the color indicates temper and heart. It is not a lucky word, this name, impossible. No good comes of those who have it so often in their mouths. Our main business is not to see what lies dimly at a distance, but to do what lies clearly at hand. Our life is not really a mutual helpfulness, but rather, its fair competition cloaked under due laws of war, it's a mutual hostility. Let me have my own way exactly in everything, and a sunnier and pleasanter creature does not exist. Under all speech that is good for anything there lies a silence that is better. Silence is deep as eternity, speech is shallow as time. What are your historical facts, still more your biographical? Wilt thou know a man by stringing together bead-rolls of what thou namest facts? As the Swiss inscription says, Sprechen ist silbern, Schweigen ist golden, speech is silver, silence is golden, or, as I might rather express it, speech is of time, silence is of eternity. Tell a man he is brave, and you help him to become so. Sarcasm is the language of the devil, for which reason I have long since as good as renounced it. Real good breeding, as the people have it here, is one of the finest things now going in the world. The careful avoidance of all discussion, the swift hopping from topic to topic, does not agree with me, but the graceful style they do it with is beyond that of minuets. Produce. Produce. Were it but the pitifullest infinitesimal fraction of a product, produce it in God's name. 'Tis the utmost thou hast in thee, out with it, then. No sooner is your ocean filled, than he grumbles that it might have been of better vintage. Try him with half of a universe, of an omnipotence, he sets to quarreling with the proprietor of the other half, and declares himself the most maltreated of men. Always there is a black spot in our sunshine, it is even as I said, the shadow of ourselves. No sadder proof can be given of a person's own tiny stature, than their disbelief in great people. Action hangs, as it were, dissolved, in speech, in thoughts whereof speech is the shadow, and precipitates itself therefrom. The kind of speech in a man betokens the kind of action you will get from him. A person usually has two reasons for doing something, a good reason and a real reason. As a first approximation, I define belief not as the object of believing, a dogma, a program, etc., but as the subject's investment in a proposition, the act of saying it and considering it as true. A terrible, beetle-browed, mastiff-mouthed, yellow-skinned, broad-bottomed, grim taciturn individual, with a pair of dull cruel-looking black eyes, and as much parliamentary intellect and silent rage in him, as I have ever seen in any man. The most fearful unbelief is unbelief in yourself. For all right judgment of any man or thing it is useful, nay, essential, to see his good qualities before pronouncing on his bad. Foolish men imagine that because judgment for an evil thing is delayed, there is no justice, but only accident here below. Judgment for an evil thing is many times delayed some day or two, some century or two, but it is sure as life, it is sure as the block of granite which was an obstacle in the pathway of the weak becomes a stepping stone in the pathway of the strong. The battle that never ends is the battle of belief against unbelief. That monstrous tuberosity of civilized life, the capital of England. For one man that can stand prosperity, there are 100 that will stand adversity. The man without a purpose is like a ship without a rudder, waif, a nothing, a no man. Have a purpose in life, and, having it, throw such strength of mind and muscle into your work as God has given you. The history of the world is but the biography of great men. The heart always sees before than the head can see. The greatest of all faults, I should say, is to be conscious of none. The great law of culture, and surely this convention before us now is a great law of culture, is, let each person become all that he was created equal of being. That is what this convention will help to achieve. The illimitable, silent, never-resting thing called time, rolling, rushing on, swift, silent, like an all-embracing ocean tide, on which we and all the universe swim like exhalations, like apparitions which are, and then are not. This is forever very literally a miracle, a thing to strike us dumb, for we have no word to speak about it. The first of all Gospels is, that no lie lives forever. What I loved in the man was his health, his unity with himself. All people and all things seem to find their quite peaceable adjustment with him. Not a proud domineering one, as after doubtful contest, but a spontaneous-looking peaceable, even humble one. The true eye for talent presupposes the true reverence for it. Silence is the eternal duty of man. In our wide world there is but one altogether fatal personage, the dunce, he that speaks irrationally, that sees not, and yet thinks he sees. When I gaze into the stars, they look down upon me with pity from their serene and silent spaces, like eyes glistening with tears over the little lot of man. Thousands of generations, all as noisy as our own, have been swallowed up by time, and there remains no record of them any more. Yet Arcturus and Orion, Sirius and Pleiades, are still shining in their courses, clear and young, as when the shepherd first noted them in the plain of Shinar. The nobleness of silence. The highest melody dwells only in silence, the sphere melody, the melody of health. Thou fool! Nature alone is antique, and the oldest art a mushroom. That idle crag thou sittest on is 6,000 years of age. Creation is great, and cannot be understood. A word spoken in season, at the right moment, is the mother of ages. We are to take no counsel with flesh and blood, give ear to no vain cavils, vain sorrows and wishes, to know that we know nothing, that the worst and cruelest to our eyes is not what it seems, that we have to receive whatsoever befalls us as sent from God above, and say, it is good and wise, God is great. Though he slay me, yet I trust in him. Islam means, in its way, denial of self. This is yet the highest wisdom that heaven has revealed to our earth. If I say that Shakespeare is the greatest of intellects, I have said all concerning him. But there is more in Shakespeare's intellect than we have yet seen. It is what I call an unconscious intellect. There is more virtue in it that he himself is aware of. The aristocracy of feudal parchment has passed away with a mighty rushing, and now, by a natural course, we arrive at aristocracy of the money bag. It is through symbols that man consciously or unconsciously lives, works, and has his being. He who cannot withal keep his mind to himself cannot practice any considerable thing whatsoever. Skepticism means, not intellectual doubt alone, but moral doubt. Wise man was he who counseled that speculation should have free course, and look fearlessly towards all the 32 points of the compass, whithersoever and howsoever it listed. The stifled hum of midnight, when traffic has lain down to rest, and the chariot wheels of vanity, still rolling here and there through distant streets, are bearing her to halls roofed in and lighted to the due pitch for her, and only vice and misery, to prowl or to moan like night birds, are abroad. Alas! While the body stands so broad and brawny, must the soul lie blinded, dwarfed, stupefied, almost annihilated? Alas! This was, too, a breath of God, bestowed in heaven, but on earth never to be unfolded. Well might the ancients make silence a god, for it is the element of all godhood, infinitude, or transcendental greatness at once the source and the ocean wherein all such begins and ends. Nakedness, hunger, distress of all kinds, death itself have been cheerfully suffered, when the heart was right. It is the feeling of injustice that is insupportable to all men. Is not light grander than fire? It is the same element in a state of purity. The infinite, absolute character of virtue has passed into a finite, conditional one. It is no longer a worship of the beautiful and good, but a calculation of the profitable. The Persians are called the French of the East, we will call the Arabs Oriental Italians. A gifted noble people, a people of wild strong feelings, and of iron restraint over these, the characteristic of noble-mindedness, of genius. History is philosophy teaching by experience. Fancy that thou deservest to be hanged, thou wilt feel it happiness to be only shot. Fancy that thou deservest to be hanged in a hair halter, it will be a luxury to die in hemp. Men are grown mechanical in head and in the heart, as well as in the hand. They have lost faith in individual endeavor, and in natural force of any kind. Speech that leads not to action, still more that hinders it, is a nuisance on the earth. That monstrous tuberosity of civilized life, the capital of England. The true Church of England, at this moment, lies in the editors of the newspapers. The public is an old woman, let her maunder and mumble. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do that with all thy might and leave the issues calmly to God. All human souls, never so bedarkened, love light, light once kindled spreads till all is luminous. A star is beautiful, it affords pleasure, not from what it is to do, or to give, but simply by being what it is. It befits the heavens, it has congruity with the mighty space in which it dwells. It has repose, no force disturbs its eternal peace. It has freedom, no obstruction lies between it and infinity. The true sovereign of the world, who molds the world like soft wax, according to his pleasure, is he who lovingly sees into the world. Close thy Byron, open thy Goethe. All true work is sacred. Labor is life. From the inmost heart of the worker rises his God-given force, the sacred celestial life essence breathed into him by Almighty God. Out of eternity the new day is born, into eternity at night will return. Ever, as before, does madness remain a mysterious terrific, altogether infernal boiling up of the nether chaotic deep, through this fair painted vision of creation, which swims thereon, which we name the real. Man's earthly interests are all hooked and buttoned together, and held up by clothes. Wealth has more and more increased, and at the same time gathered itself more and more into masses, strangely altering the old relations, and increasing the distance between the rich and the poor. The great silent man, looking round on the noisy inanity of the world, words with little meaning, actions with little worth, one loves to reflect on the great empire of silence. How great a possibility, how small a realized result. Whoso has sixpence is sovereign, to the length of sixpence, over all men, commands cooks to feed him, philosophers to teach him, kings to mount guard over him to the length of sixpence. We remove mountains, and make seas our smooth highway, nothing can resist us. We war with rude nature, and, by our resistless engines, come off always victorious, and loaded with spoils. Speak not at all, in any wise, till you have somewhat to speak, care not for the reward of your speaking, but simply and with undivided mind for the truth of your speaking. He who first shortened the labor of copyists by device of movable types was disbanding hired armies and cashiering most kings and senates, and creating a whole new democratic world. He had invented the art of printing. Before philosophy can teach by experience, the philosophy has to be in readiness, the experience must be gathered and intelligibly recorded. There is endless merit in a man's knowing when to have done. And yet without labor there were no ease, no rest, so much as conceivable. A fourth estate, of able editors, springs up. Be a pattern to others, and then all will go well, for as a whole city is affected by the licentious passions and vices of great men, so it is likewise reformed by their moderation. He is wise who can instruct us and assist us in the business of virtuous living. History, a distillation of rumor. The errors of a wise man are literally more instructive than the truths of a fool. The wise man travels in lofty, far-seeing regions, the fool in low-lying, high-fenced lanes, retracing the footsteps of the former, to discover where he deviated. Whole provinces of the universe are laid open to us, in the path of the latter, granting even that he has not deviated at all. Little is laid open to us but 2 wheel ruts and 2 hedges. Nature is the time vesture of God that reveals him to the wise, and hides him from the foolish. We do everything by custom, even believe by it, our very axioms, let us boast of free thinking as we may, are oftenest simply such beliefs as we have never heard questioned. Debt is a bottomless sea. Self-contemplation is infallibly the symptom of disease. Is not every meanest day the confluence of 2 eternities? So here hath been dawning another blue day, think, wilt thou let it slip useless away? Out of eternity this new day is born, into eternity at night will return. Obedience is our universal duty and destiny, wherein whoso will not bend must break. Too early and too thoroughly we cannot be trained to know that would, in this world of ours, is a mere zero to should, and for most part as the smallest of fractions even to shall. God gave you that gifted tongue of yours, and set it between your teeth, to make known your true meaning to us, not to be rattled like a muffin man's bell. Providence has given to the French the empire of the land, to the English that of the sea, to the Germans that of the air. There is no permanent place in this universe for evil. Evil may hide behind this fallacy and that, but it will be hunted from fallacy to fallacy until there is no more fallacy for it to hide behind. Scarcely 200 years back can fame recollect articulately at all, and there she but maunders and mumbles. We have not the love of greatness, but the love of greatness. A man must indeed be a hero to appear such in the eyes of his valet. Histories are as perfect as the historian is wise, and is gifted with an eye and a soul. All comes out even at the end of the day. All history is an inarticulate Bible. Not what you possess, but what you do with what you have, determines your true worth. A lie should be trampled on and extinguished wherever found. I am for fumigating the atmosphere when I suspect that falsehood, like pestilence, breathes around me. Originality is a thing we constantly clamor for, and constantly quarrel with, as if, observes our author himself, any originality but our own could be expected to content us. In fact, all strange things are apt, without fault of theirs, to estrange us at first view, and unhappily scarcely anything is perfectly plain, but what is also perfectly common. Laws themselves, political constitutions, are not our life, but only the house wherein our life is led. He who takes not counsel of the unseen and silent, from him will never come real visibility and speech. To a shower of gold most things are penetrable. It is well said, in every sense, that a man's religion is the chief fact with regard to him. Fame, we may understand, is no sure test of merit, but only a probability of such. It is an accident, not a property of man. I never heard tell of any clever man that came of entirely stupid people. Do nothing, only keep agitating, debating, and things will destroy themselves. To believe practically that the poor and luckless are here only as a nuisance to be upbraided and abetted, and in some permissible manner made away with, and swept out of sight, is not an amiable faith. Love not pleasure, love God. Not only was Thebes built by the music of an Orpheus, but without the music of some inspired Orpheus was no city ever built, no work that man glories in ever done. Work earnestly at anything, you will by degrees learn to work at all things. Prayer is and remains always a native and deepest impulse of the soul of man. Such is the world. Understand it, despise it, love it, cheerfully hold on thy way through it, with thy eye on highest lodestars. The all of things is an infinite conjugation of the verb to do. A mind that has seen, and suffered, and done, speaks to us of what it has tried and conquered. But deepest of all illusory appearances, for hiding wonder, as for many other ends, are your two grand fundamental world-enveloping appearances, space and time. These, as spun and woven for us from before birth itself, to clothe our celestial me for dwelling here, and yet to blind it, lie all-embracing, as the universal canvas, or warp and woof, whereby all minor illusions, in this phantasm existence, weave and paint themselves. In vain, while here on earth, shall you endeavor to strip them off, you can, at best, but rend them asunder for moments, and look through. O thou who art able to write a book, which once in the 2 centuries or oftener there is a man gifted to do, envy not him whom they name city builder, and inexpressibly pity him whom they name conqueror or city burner. Thou too art a conqueror and victor, but of the true sort, namely over the devil. Thou too hast built what will outlast all marble and metal, and be a wonder-bringing city of the mind, a temple and seminary and prophetic mount, whereto all kindreds of the earth will pilgrim. In every man's writings, the character of the writer must lie recorded. The English are a dumb people. They can do great acts, but not describe them. Misery which, through long ages, had no spokesman, no helper, will now be its own helper and speak for itself. Society is founded on hero worship. In the poorest cottage are books, is one book, wherein for several thousands of years the spirit of man has found light and nourishment, and an interpreting response to whatever is deepest in him. Language is called the garment of thought. However, it should rather be, language is the flesh garment, the body, of thought. Nature admits no lie. Reform, like charity, must begin at home. A man with a half volition goes backwards and forwards, and makes no way on the smoothest road. A man with a whole volition advances on the roughest, and will reach his purpose, if there be even a little worthiness in it. The man without a purpose is like a ship without a rudder, a waif, a nothing, a no man. Have a purpose in life, and having it, throw such strength of mind and muscle into your work as God has given you. The goal of yesterday will be our starting point tomorrow. Man always worships something, always he sees the infinite shadowed forth in something finite, and indeed can and must so see it in any finite thing. Once tempt him well to fix his eyes thereon. Genuine work alone, what thou workest faithfully, that is eternal, as the Almighty Founder and World Builder himself. High air castles are cunningly built of words, the words well bedded also in good logic mortar, wherein, however, no knowledge will come to lodge. Midas-eared mammonism, double-barreled dilettantism, and their thousand adjuncts and corollaries, are not the law by which God Almighty has appointed this His universe to go. A fair day's wage for a fair day's work, it is as just a demand as governed men ever made of governing. It is the everlasting right of man. Doubt of any kind cannot be resolved except by action. Worship of a hero is transcendent admiration of a great man. Hero worship exists, has existed, and will forever exist, universally, among mankind. Great men are the inspired texts of that divine book of Revelations, whereof a chapter is completed from epoch to epoch, and by some named history. France was long a despotism tempered by epigrams. Naps are a way of traveling painlessly through time into the future. Great men are the modelers, patterns, and in a wide sense creators, of whatsoever the general mass of men contrive to do and attain. The greatest security against sin is to be shocked at its presence. Music, a kind of inarticulate, unfathomable speech, which leads to the edge of the infinite. It is in general more profitable to reckon up our defeats than to boast of our attainments. I have seen gleams in the face and eyes of the man that have let you look into a higher country. No man sees far, most see no farther than their noses. Nay, in every epoch of the world, the great event, parent of all others, is it not the arrival of a thinker in the world? Statistics is a science which ought to be honorable, the basis of many most important sciences, but it is not to be carried on by steam, this science, any more than others are. A wise head is requisite for carrying it on. A man perfects himself by working. Foul jungles are cleared away, fair seed fields rise instead, and stately cities, and with the man himself first ceases to be a jungle, and foul unwholesome desert thereby. The man is now a man. There is but one temple in this universe, the body. We speak to God whenever we lay our hands upon it. The fine arts once divorcing themselves from truth are quite certain to fall mad, if they do not die. Except by name, Jean-Paul Friedrich Richter is little known out of Germany. The only thing connected with him, we think, that has reached this country is his saying, imported by Madame de Staël, and thankfully pocketed by most newspaper critics. Providence has given to the French the empire of the land, to the English that of the sea, to the Germans that of the air. Richter, German humorist, prose writer. No sooner does a great man depart, and leave his character as public property, than a crowd of little men rushes towards it. There they are gathered together, blinking up to it with such vision as they have, scanning it from afar, hovering round it this way and that, each cunningly endeavoring, by all arts, to catch some reflex of it in the little mirror of himself. If those gentlemen would let me alone, I should be much obliged to them. I would say, as Shakespeare would say, "Sweet friend, for Jesus' sake forbear." To the vulgar eye, few things are wonderful that are not distant. What, in the devil's name, is the use of respectability, with never so many gigs and silver spoons, if thou inwardly art the pitifulness of all men? Statistics, one may hope, will improve gradually, and become good for something. Meanwhile, it is to be feared the crabbed satirist was partly right. As things go, a judicious man, says he, looks at statistics, not to get knowledge, but to save himself from having ignorance foisted on him. History, as it lies at the root of all science, is also the first distinct product of man's spiritual nature, his earliest expression of what may be called thought. Science has done much for us, but it is a poor science that would hide from us the great deep sacred infinitude of nescience, on which all science swims as a mere superficial film. Is man's civilization only a wrappage, through which the savage nature of him can still burst, infernal as ever? Are we not spirits, that are shaped into a body, into an appearance, and that fade away again into air and invisibility? Oh, heaven, it is mysterious, it is awful to consider that we not only carry a future ghost within us, but are, in very deed, ghosts. These limbs, whence had we them, this stormy force, this life-blood with its burning passion? They are dust and shadow, a shadow system gathered round our me, wherein, through some moments or years, the divine essence is to be revealed in the flesh. The purpose of man is in action, not thought. For man is not the creature and product of mechanism, but, in a far truer sense, its creator and producer. Man is emphatically a proselytizing creature. Conclusive facts are inseparable from inconclusive except by a head that already understands and knows. I call the book of Job, apart from all theories about it, one of the grandest things ever written with the pen. Dinners are defined as the ultimate act of communion. Men that can have communion in nothing else, can sympathetically eat together, can still rise into some glow of brotherhood over food and wine. Battles, in these ages, are transacted by mechanism, with the slightest possible development of human individuality or spontaneity. Men now even die, and kill one another, in an artificial manner. We have profoundly forgotten everywhere that cash payment is not the sole relation of human beings. What are your axioms, and categories, and systems, and aphorisms? Words, words. Be not the slave of words. The beginning of all wisdom is to look fixedly on clothes, or even with armed eyesight, till they become transparent. The whole past is the procession of the present. Let a man try faithfully, manfully to be right, he will daily grow more and more right. It is at the bottom of the condition on which all men have to cultivate themselves. Infinite is the help man can yield to man. 30 millions, mostly fools. The age of miracles is forever here. History is a great dust heap. Also, what mountains of dead ashes, wreck and burnt bones, does assiduous pedantry dig up from the past time and name it history? We have not read an author till we have seen his object, whatever it may be, as he saw it. The suffering man ought really to consume his own smoke. There is no good in emitting smoke till you have made it into fire. The eternal stars shine out as soon as it is dark enough. Intellect is the soul of man, the only immortal part of him. No iron chain, or outward force of any kind, could ever compel the soul of man to believe or to disbelieve. It is his own indefeasible light, that judgment of his. He will reign and believe there by the grace of God alone. The mystical bond of brotherhood makes all men brothers. No conquest can ever become permanent which does not show itself beneficial to the conquered as well as to the conquerors. If you will believe me, you who are young, yours is the golden season of life. As you have heard it called, so it verily is, the seed time of life, in which, if you do not sow, or if you sow tares instead of wheat, you cannot expect to reap well afterwards, and you will arrive at little. And in the course of years when you come to look back, if you have not done what you have heard from your advisers, and among many counselors there is wisdom, you will bitterly repent when it is too late. On the whole, I would bid you stand up to your work, whatever it may be, and not be afraid of it, not in sorrows or contradictions to yield, but to push on towards the goal. Coining dismal science as a nickname for political economy. Respectable professors of the dismal science. Laws, written, if not on stone tables, yet on the azure of infinitude, in the inner heart of God's creation, certain as life, certain as death, are there, and thou shalt not disobey them. Friendship, in the old heroic sense of that term, no longer exists. It is in reality no longer expected or recognized as a virtue among men. A thought once awakened does not again slumber. All greatness is unconscious, or it is little and naught. Action hangs, as it were, dissolved in speech, in thoughts whereof speech is the shadow, and precipitates itself therefrom. The kind of speech in a man betokens the kind of action you will get from him. The devil has his elect. In idleness there is a perpetual despair. The graceful minuet dance of fancy must give place to the toilsome, thorny pilgrimage of understanding, on the transition from the age of romance to that of science. Manhood begins when we have in any way made truce with necessity, begins even when we have surrendered to necessity, as the most part only do, but begins joyfully and hopefully only when we have reconciled ourselves to necessity, and thus, in reality, triumphed over it, and felt that in necessity we are free. The most unhappy of all men is the man who cannot tell what he is going to do, who has got no work cut out for him in the world, and does not go into it. For work is the grand cure of all the maladies and miseries that ever beset mankind, honest work, which you intend getting done. Only perhaps in the United States, which alone of countries can do without governing, every man being at least able to live, and move off into the wilderness. Let Congress jargon as it will, can such a form of so-called government continue for any length of time to torment men with the semblance, when the indispensable substance is not there? Considering the multitude of mortals that handle the pen in these days, and can mostly spell, and write without glaring violations of grammar, the question naturally arises, how is it, then, that no work proceeds from them, bearing any stamp of authenticity and permanence, of worth for more than one day? Does not every true man feel that he is himself made higher by doing reverence to what is really above him? He that will not work according to his faculty, let him perish according to his necessity. There is no law juster than that. There is always hope in a man who actually and earnestly works. A battle is a terrible conjugation of the verb to kill. I kill, thou killest, he kills, we kill, they kill, all kill. I should say sincerity, a deep, great, genuine sincerity, is the first characteristic of all men in any way heroic. There is something in man which your science cannot satisfy. Parliament will train you to talk, and above all things to hear, with patience, unlimited quantities of foolish talk. The world is an old woman, and mistakes any gilt farthing for a gold coin, whereby being often cheated, she will thenceforth trust nothing but the common copper. Little other than a red-tape talking machine, an unhappy bag of parliamentary eloquence. Rest is a fine medicine. Let your stomachs rest, ye dyspeptics, let your brain rest, you wearied and worried people of business, let your limbs rest, ye children of toil. The great man's sincerity is of the kind he cannot speak of, is not conscious of, nay, I suppose, he is conscious rather of insincerity. For what man can walk accurately by the law of truth for one day? No, the great man does not boast himself sincere, far from that, perhaps does not ask himself if he is so. I would say rather, his sincerity does not depend on himself. He cannot help being sincere. Cherish what is dearest while you have it near you, and wait not till it is far away. Blind and deaf that we are, oh, think, if thou yet love anybody living, wait not till death sweep down the paltry little dust clouds and dissonances of the moment, and all be made at last so mournfully clear and beautiful, when it is too late. We were wise indeed, could we discern truly the signs of our own time, and by knowledge of its wants and advantages, wisely adjust our own position in it. Let us, instead of gazing idly into the obscure distance, look calmly around us, for a little, on the perplexed scene where we stand. Perhaps, on a more serious inspection, something of its perplexity will disappear, some of its distinctive characters and deeper tendencies more clearly reveal themselves, whereby our own relations to it, our own true aims and endeavors in it, may also become clearer. In the true literary man there is thus ever, acknowledged or not by the world, a sacredness. He is the light of the world's priest, guiding it, like a sacred pillar of fire, in its dark pilgrimage through the waste of time. All sorts of heroes are intrinsically of the same material, that given a great soul, open to the divine significance of life, then there is given a man fit to speak of this, to sing of this, to fight and work for this, in a great, victorious, enduring manner, there is given a hero, the outward shape of whom will depend on the time and the environment he finds himself in. Hero worship is the deepest root of all, the taproot, from which in a great degree all the rest were nourished and grown. Worship of a hero is transcendent admiration of a great man. I say great men are still admirable, I say there is, at bottom, nothing else admirable. No nobler feeling than this of admiration for one higher than himself dwells in the breast of men. A man should be encouraged to do what the Maker of him has intended by the making of him, according as the gifts have been bestowed on him for that purpose. Speech is too often not the art of concealing thought, but of quite stifling and suspending thought, so that there is none to conceal. There is precious instruction to be got by finding we were wrong. The grand result of schooling is a mind with just vision to discern, with free force to do. The grand schoolmaster is practice. This little life has its duties that are great, that are alone great, and that go up to heaven and down to hell. Innumerable are the illusions and legerdemain tricks of custom, but of all of these, perhaps the cleverest is her knack of persuading us that the miraculous, by simple repetition, ceases to be miraculous. Courtesy is the due of man to man, not of suit of clothes to suit of clothes. A background of wrath, which can be stirred up to the murderous infernal pitch, does lie in every man. Once turned to practice, error and truth will no longer consort together. He that has done nothing has known nothing. What is nature? Art thou not the living government of God? O heaven, is it in very deed he then that ever speaks through thee, that lives and loves in thee, that lives and loves in me? At worst, is not this an unjust world, full of nothing but beasts of prey, four-footed or two-footed? Man is, and was always, a blockhead and dullard, much readier to feel and digest, than to think and consider. Nothing ever happens but once in all this world. What I do now I do once for all. It is over and gone, with all its eternity of solemn meaning. To the mean eye all things are trivial, as certainly as to the jaundiced they are yellow. The past is always attractive because it is drained of fear. Love not pleasure, love God. This is the everlasting yea, wherein all contradiction is solved. No man at bottom means injustice, it is always for some obscure distorted image of a right that he contends, an obscure image diffracted, exaggerated, in the wonderfulest way by natural dimness and selfishness, getting tenfold more diffracted by exasperation of contest, till at length it become all but irrecognosable. Feel it in thy heart and then say whether it is of God. Men worship the shows of great men, the most disbelieve that there is any reality of great men to worship. Is there no God, then, but at best an absentee God, sitting idle, ever since the first Sabbath, at the outside of his universe? Our very walking is an incessant falling, a falling and a catching of ourselves before we come actually to the pavement. It is emblematic of all things a man does. Pin thy faith to no man's sleeve. Hast thou not two eyes of thy own? What unknown seas of feeling lie in man, and will from time to time break through? God Almighty never created a man half as wise as he looks. What is all knowledge except recorded experience, and a product of history? Habit and imitation. There is nothing more perennial in us than these two. They are the source of all working, and all apprenticeship, of all practice, and all learning, in this world. The healthy know not of their health, but only the sick. This is the physician's aphorism, and applicable in a far wider sense than he gives it. The true epic of our times is not arms and the man, but tools and the man, an infinitely wider kind of epic. Blessed is he who has found his work, let him ask no other blessedness. He has a work, a life purpose. Get your happiness out of your work or you will never know what real happiness is. Even in the meanest sorts of labor, The whole soul of a man is composed into a kind of real harmony the instant he sets himself to work. The tragedy of life is not so much what men suffer, but rather what they miss. The philosopher is he to whom the highest has descended, and the lowest has mounted up, who is the equal and kindly brother of all. Experience takes dreadfully high school wages, but he teaches like no other. The Christian must be consumed by the conviction of the infinite beauty of holiness and the infinite damnability of sin. One life, a little gleam of time between two eternities, no second chance to us forevermore. The past is all holy to us, the dead are all holy, even they that were wicked when alive. If time is precious, no book that will not improve by repeated readings deserves to be read at all. That great mystery of time, were there no other, the illimitable, silent, never-resting thing called time, rolling, rushing on, swift, silent, like an all-embracing ocean tide, on which we and all the universe swim like exhalations, like apparitions which are, and then are not. This is forever very literally a miracle, a thing to strike us dumb, for we have no word to speak about it. They only are wise who know that they know nothing. Every man is my superior in that I may learn from him. Let me have my own way in exactly everything, and a sunnier and pleasanter creature does not exist. In every object there is inexhaustible meaning. Fame is no sure test of merit. Look to be treated by others as you have treated others. May blessings be upon the head of Cadmus, the Phoenicians, or whoever it was that invented books. The press is the fourth estate of the realm. The great soul of this world is just. Just in ratio as knowledge increases, faith diminishes. If a man was great while living, he becomes tenfold greater when dead. You can make even a parrot into a learned political economist, all he must learn are the two words supply and demand. All human things do require to have an ideal in them, to have some soul in them. No mortal has a right to wag his tongue, much less to wag his pen, without saying something. Produce. Were it but the pitifullest, infinitesimal fraction of a product, produce it in God's name. 'Tis the utmost thou hast in thee. Out with it then. Up. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy whole might. One is weary of hearing about the omnipotence of money. I will say rather that, for a genuine man, it is not evil to be poor. They wrong man greatly who say he is to be seduced by ease. Difficulty, abnegation, martyrdom, death are the allurements that act on the heart of man. A frightful dialect for the stupid, the pedant and dullard sort. This we take it is the grand characteristic of our age. By our skill in mechanism, it has come to pass, that in the management of external things we excel all other ages, while in whatever respects the pure moral nature, in true dignity of soul and character, we are perhaps inferior to most civilized ages. Lives the man that can figure a naked Duke of Windlestraw addressing a naked House of Lords. They have their belief, these poor Tibet people, that Providence sends down always an incarnation of himself into every generation. At bottom some belief in a kind of Pope. At bottom still better, a belief that there is a greatest man, that he is discoverable, that, once discovered, we ought to treat him with an obedience which knows no bounds. This is the truth of Grand Lamaism, the discoverability is the only error here. So much of truth, only under an ancient obsolete vesture, but the spirit of it still true, do I find in the paganism of old nations. Nature is still divine, the revelation of the workings of God, the hero is still worshipable, this, under poor cramped incipient forms, is what all pagan religions have struggled, as they could, to set forth. Professors of the dismal science, I perceive the length of your tether is now pretty well run, and I must request you to talk a little lower in the future. Persons, with big wigs, many of them an austere aspect, whom I take to be professors of the dismal science, coining dismal science as a nickname for political economy. The sincere alone can recognize sincerity. The world is a thing that a man must learn to despise, and even to neglect, before he can learn to reverence it, and work in it and for it. Labor, wide as the earth, has its summit in heaven. A pygmy standing on the outward crust of this small planet, his far-reaching spirit stretches outward to the infinite, and there alone finds rest. The highest being reveals himself in man. With union grounded on falsehood and ordering us to speak and act lies, we will not have anything to do. Peace. A brutal lethargy is peaceable, the noisome is peaceable. We hope for a living peace, not a dead one. Superstition. That horrid incubus which dwelt in darkness, shunning the light, with all its racks, and poisoned chalices, and foul sleeping draughts, is passing away without return. Religion cannot pass away. The burning of a little straw may hide the stars of the sky, but the stars are there and will reappear. Blessed be the God's voice, for it is true, and falsehoods have to cease before it. A man protesting against error is on the way towards uniting himself with all men that believe in truth. The scandalous bronze lacquer age of hungry animalisms, spiritual impotences, and mendacities, will have to run its course, till the pit follow it. He who talks much about virtue in the abstract, begins to be suspected. It is shrewdly guessed that where there is great preaching there will be little almsgiving. No country can find eternal peace and comfort where the vote of Judas Iscariot is as good as the vote of the Savior of mankind. The deepest depth of vulgarism is that of setting up money as the Ark of the Covenant. The vulgarity of inanimate things requires time to get accustomed to, but living, breathing, bustling, plotting, planning, human vulgarity is a species of moral ipecacuanha, enough to destroy any comfort. Great is wisdom, infinite is the value of wisdom. It cannot be exaggerated, it is the highest achievement of man. The modern majesty consists in work. What a man can do is his greatest ornament, and he always consults his dignity by doing it. Goethe's devil is a cultivated personage and acquainted with the modern sciences, sneers at witchcraft and the black art even while employing them, and doubts most things. Nay, half disbelieves even his own existence. Metaphysics is the attempt of the mind to rise above the mind. If a book comes from the heart, it will contrive to reach other hearts. All art and authorcraft are of small amount to that. Lies exist only to be extinguished. One monster there is in the world, the idle man. My whinstone house my castle is, I have my own four walls. It is not a lucky word, this name impossible, no good comes of those who have it so often in their mouths. The dead are all holy, even they that were base and wicked while alive. Their baseness and wickedness was not they, was but the heavy and unmanageable environment that lay round them. What the light of your mind, which is the direct inspiration of the Almighty, pronounces incredible, that, in God's name, leave uncredited. At your peril do not try believing that. The great law of culture is, let each become all that he was created capable of being, expand, if possible, to his full growth, resisting all impediments, casting off all foreign, especially all noxious adhesions, and show himself at length in his own shape and stature, be these what they may. Custom doth make dotards of us all. Enjoying things which are pleasant, that is not the evil, it is the reducing of our moral self to slavery by them that is. There can be no acting or doing of any kind till it be recognized that there is a thing to be done. The thing once recognized, doing in 1,000 shapes becomes possible. By nature man hates change, seldom will he quit his old home till it has actually fallen around his ears. A noble book. All Men's Book. Rare Benevolence, the Minister of God. Good Christian people, here lies for you an inestimable loan, take all heed thereof, in all carefulness, employ it, with high recompense, or else with heavy penalty, will it one day be required back. Democracy means despair of finding any heroes to govern you, and contented putting up with the want of them. I had a lifelong quarrel with God, but in the end we made up. There are female dandies as well as clothes-wearing men, and the former are as objectionable as the latter. History after all is the true poetry. A poor creature who has said or done nothing worth a serious man taking the trouble of remembering. Affectation is the product of falsehood. The choking, sweltering, deadly, and killing rule of no rule, the consecration of cupidity in braying of folly, and dim stupidity in baseness, in most of the affairs of men. Slop shirts attainable 3 halfpence cheaper by the ruin of living bodies and immortal souls. In no time whatever can small critics entirely eradicate out of living men's hearts a certain altogether peculiar choler reverence for great men, genuine admiration, loyalty, adoration. It is not to taste sweet things, but to do noble and true things, and vindicate himself under God's heaven as a God made man, that the poorest son of Adam dimly longs. Show him the way of doing that, the dullest day drudge kindles into a hero. They wrong man greatly who say he is to be seduced by ease. Difficulty, abnegation, martyrdom, death, are the allurements that act on the heart of man. Kindle the inner genial life of him, you have a flame that burns up all lower considerations. Authors are the vanguard in the march of mind, the intellectual backwoodsmen, reclaiming from the idle wilderness new territories for the thought and activity of their happier brethren. Our works are the mirror wherein the spirit first sees its natural lineaments. Hence, too, the folly of that impossible precept, know thyself, till it be translated into this partially possible one, know what thou canst work at. A heavenly awe overshadowed and encompassed, as it still ought, and must, all earthly business whatsoever. O thou who art able to write a book which once in the 2 centuries or oftener there is a man gifted to do, envy not him whom they name city builder, and inexpressibly pity him whom they name conqueror or city burner. Of a truth, men are mystically united, a mystic bond of brotherhood makes all men one. The true past departs not, no truth or goodness realized by man ever dies, or can die, but all is still here, and, recognized or not, lives and works through endless change. In every object there is inexhaustible meaning, the eye sees in it what the eye brings means of seeing. What is all knowledge too but recorded experience, and a product of history, of which, therefore, reasoning and belief, no less than action and passion, are essential materials? There is no life of a man, faithfully recorded, but is a heroic poem of its sort, rhymed or unrhymed. Alas! We know that ideals can never be completely embodied in practice. Ideals must ever lie a great way off, and we will thankfully content ourselves with any not intolerable approximation thereto. Let no man, as Schiller says, too querulously measure by a scale of perfection the meager product of reality in this poor world of ours. The essence of humor is sensibility, warm, tender fellow-feeling with all forms of existence. The civil authority, or that part of it which remained faithful to their trust and true to the ends of the covenant, did, in answer to their consciences, turn out a tyrant, in a way which the Christians in after times will mention with honor, and all tyrants in the world look at with fear. At the bottom there is no perfect history, there is none such conceivable. All past centuries have rotted down, and gone confusedly dumb and quiet. The greatest of all heroes is one whom we do not name here. Let sacred silence meditate that sacred matter, you will find it the ultimate perfection of a principle extant throughout man's whole history on earth. Venerable to me is the hard hand, crooked, course, wherein, notwithstanding, lies a cunning virtue, indispensably royal as of the scepter of the planet. The all-importance of clothes has sprung up in the intellect of the dandy without effort, like an instinct of genius. He is inspired with clothes, a poet of clothes. How were friendship possible? In mutual devotedness to the good and true, otherwise impossible, except as armed neutrality or hollow commercial league. A man, be the heavens ever praised, is sufficient for himself, yet were 10 men, united in love, capable of being and of doing what 10,000 singly would fail in. Infinite is the help man can yield to man. To be true is manly, chivalrous, Christian, to be false is mean, cowardly, devilish. Let time and chance combine, combine. Let time and chance combine. The fairest love from heaven above, that love of yours was mine, my dear. That love of yours was mine. Poetry, therefore, we will call musical thought. Great souls are always loyally submissive, reverent to what is over them, only small mean souls are otherwise. No nobler feeling than this, of admiration for one higher than himself, dwells in the breast of man. It is to this hour, and at all hours, the vivifying influence in man's life. Heroes, it would seem, exist always, and a certain worship of them. Why multiply instances? It is written, the heavens and the earth shall fade away like a vesture, which indeed they are, the time vesture of the eternal. Whatsoever sensibly exists, whatsoever represents spirit to spirit, is properly a clothing, a suit of raiment, put on for a season, and to be laid off. Thus in this one pregnant subject of clothes, rightly understood, is included all that men have thought, dreamed, done, and been. The whole external universe and what it holds is but clothing, and the essence of all science lies in the philosophy of clothes. Society is founded upon cloth. Happy the people whose annals are blank in the history books. Dishonesty is the raw material not of quacks only, but also in great part dupes. Let him who gropes painfully in darkness or uncertain light, and prays vehemently that the dawn may ripen into day, lay this precept well to heart. Do the duty which lies nearest to thee, which thou know to be a duty. Thy second duty will already have become clearer. It is meritorious to insist on forms. Religion and all else naturally clothes itself in forms. Everywhere the formed world is the only habitable one. Experience of actual fact either teaches fools or abolishes them. Thought is the parent of the deed. Rich as we are in biography, a well-written life is almost as rare as a well-spent one, and there are certainly many more men whose history deserves to be recorded than persons willing and able to record it. Tobacco smoke is the one element in which, by our European manners, men can sit silent together without embarrassment, and where no man is bound to speak one word more than he has actually and veritably got to say. Nay, rather every man is admonished and enjoined by the laws of honor, and even of personal ease, to stop short of that point, and at all events to hold his peace and take to his pipe again the instant he has spoken his meaning, if he chance to have any. Contented saturnine human figures, a dozen or so of them, sitting around a large long table, perfect. Equality is to be the rule, no rising or notice taken when anybody enters or leaves. Let the entering man take his place and pipe, without obligatory remarks. If he cannot smoke, let him at least affect to do so, and not ruffle the established stream of things. Social science is not a gay science, but rueful, which finds the secret of this universe in supply and demand and reduces the duty of human governors to that of letting men alone. Not a gay science, no, a dreary, desolate, and indeed quite abject and distressing one, what we might call the dismal science. The merit of originality is not novelty, it is sincerity. The believing man is the original man. Whatsoever he believes it for himself, not for another. O thou that pinest in the imprisonment of the actual, and criest bitterly to the gods for a kingdom wherein to rule and create, know this for a truth. The thing thou seekest is already here, here or nowhere, couldst thou only see. The archenemy is the arch-stupid. A person with half volition goes backwards and forwards, but makes no progress on even the smoothest of roads. There is so much data available to us, but most data won't help us succeed. If you are looking at data over and over, you better be taking away valuable insight every time. If you are constantly looking at data that isn't leading to strategic action, stop wasting your time and look for more actionable analytics. Force, force, everywhere force. We ourselves a mysterious force in the center of that. There is not a leaf rotting on the highway but has force in it. How else could it rot? As used in his time, by the word force, Carlyle means energy. Books are a triviality. Life alone is great. Life is a series of lessons that have to be understood. The ideal is in thyself, the impediments too is in thyself. Why tell me that a man is a fine speaker, if it is not the truth that he is speaking? Biography is the only true history. A man's perfection is his work. One is hardly sensible of fatigue while he marches to music. Man's unhappiness comes of his greatness. It is because there is an infinite in him, with which all his cunning he cannot quite bury under the finite. Try him with half of a universe, of an omnipotence. He sets to quarreling with the proprietor of the other half, and declares himself the most maltreated of men. Always there is a black spot in our sunshine. It is the shadow of ourselves. That a parliament, especially a parliament with newspaper reporters firmly established in it, is an entity which by its very nature cannot do work, but can do talk only. A fair day's wages for a fair day's work. But the whim we have of happiness is somewhat thus. By certain valuations, and averages, of our own striking, we come upon some sort of average terrestrial lot. This we fancy belongs to us by nature, and of indefeasible rights. It is simple payment of our wages, of our deserts, requires neither thanks nor complaint. Foolish soul! What act of legislature was there that thou shouldst be happy? A little while ago thou hadst no right to be at all. Not our logical faculty, but our imaginative one is king over us. I might say, priest and prophet to lead us to heavenward, or magician and wizard to lead us hellward. Stern accuracy in inquiring, bold imagination in describing, these are the cogs on which history soars or flutters and wobbles. All evil is like a nightmare, the instant you stir under it, the evil is gone. Democracy will prevail when men believe the vote of Judas as good as that of Jesus Christ. The hell of these days is the fear of not getting along, especially of not making money. Pain was not given thee merely to be miserable under. Learn from it, turn it to account. Rest is for the dead. Skepticism, as I said, is not intellectual only, it is moral also, a chronic atrophy and disease of the whole soul. A man lives by believing something, not by debating and arguing about many things. A sad case for him when all that he can manage to believe is something he can button in his pocket, and with one or the other organ eat and digest. Lower than that he will not get. Have not I myself known 500 living soldiers sabred into crow's meat for a piece of glazed cotton, which they call their flag, which had you sold it at any market cross, would not have brought above 3 groschen. Clean undeniable right, clear undeniable might, either of these once ascertained puts an end to battle. All battle is a confused experiment to ascertain one and both of these. For the superior morality, of which we hear so much, we too would desire to be thankful. At the same time, it were but blindness to deny that this superior morality is properly rather an inferior criminality, produced not by greater love of virtue, but by greater perfection of police, and of that far subtler and stronger police, called public opinion. All men, if they work not as in the great taskmaster's eye, will work wrong, and work unhappily for themselves and for you. The person who cannot laugh is not only ready for treason and deceptions, their whole life is already a treason and deception. Laughter is the cipher key wherewith we decipher the whole man. Burke said there were 3 estates in Parliament, but, in the reporters' gallery yonder, there sat a 4th estate more important far than they all. Men are to be guided only by their self-interests. Good government is a good balancing of these, and, except a keen eye and appetite for self-interest, requires no virtue in any quarter. To both parties it is emphatically a machine, to the discontented, a taxing machine, to the contented, a machine for securing property. Its duties and its faults are not those of a father, but of an active parish constable. It is not honest inquiry that makes anarchy, but it is error, insincerity, half-belief and untruth that make it. History is the distillation of rumor. Eternity looks grander and kinder if time grow meaner and more hostile. In books lies the soul of the whole pastime, the articulate audible voice of the past, when the body and material substance of it has altogether vanished like a dream. All work, even cotton spinning, is noble, work is alone noble. There needs not a great soul to make a hero, there needs a God-created soul which will be true to its origin, that will be a great soul. The battle that never ends is the battle of belief against disbelief. Love is ever the beginning of knowledge as fire is of light. Literature is the thought of thinking souls. Have a purpose in life, and having it, throw into your work such strength of mind and muscle as God has given you. Of our thinking it is but the upper surface that we shape into articulate thought. Underneath the region of argument and conscious discourse lies the region of meditation. The authentic insight and experience of any human soul, were it but insight and experience in hewing of wood and drawing of water, is real knowledge, a real possession and acquirement. It is the feeling of injustice that is insupportable to all men. In a different time, in a different place, it is always some other side of our common human nature that has been developing itself. The actual truth is the sum of all these. In a certain sense all men are historians. One of the godlike things of this world is the veneration done to human worth by the hearts of men. History is the new poetry. Hardened round us, encasing wholly every notion we form is a wrapping of traditions, hearsays, and mere words. A greater number of God's creatures believe in Mahomet's word at this hour than in any other word whatever. Are we to suppose that it was a miserable piece of spiritual legerdemain, this which so many creatures of the Almighty have lived by and died by? When Pocock inquired of Grotius, where the proof was of that story of the pigeon, trained to pick peas from Mahomet's ear, and pass for an angel dictating to him, Grotius answered that there was no proof. As there is no danger of our becoming, any of us, Mohammedans, i.e. Muslim, I mean to say all the good of him I justly can. The condition of the most passionate enthusiast is to be preferred over the individual who, because of the fear of making a mistake, won't in the end affirm or deny anything. The depth of our despair measures what capability and height of claim we have to hope. Cash payment never was, or could except for a few years be, the union bond of man to man. Cash never yet paid one man fully his deserts to another, nor could it, nor can it, now or henceforth to the end of the world. Speech is great, but silence is greater. For suffering and enduring there is no remedy, but striving and doing. No person was ever rightly understood until they had been first regarded with a certain feeling, not of tolerance, but of sympathy. We call it a society, and go about professing openly the totalist separation, isolation. Our life is not a mutual helpfulness, but rather, cloaked under due laws of war, named fair competition and so forth, it is a mutual hostility. Violence does even justice unjustly. Government is emphatically a machine, to the discontented a taxing machine, to the contented a machine for securing property. The Bible is the truest utterance that ever came by alphabetic letters from the soul of man, through which, as through a window divinely opened, all men can look into the stillness of eternity, and discern in glimpses their far distant, long-forgotten home. I have no patience whatever with these guerrilla damnifications of humanity. No violent extreme endures. Necessity dispenseth with decorum. A sad spectacle. If they be inhabited, what a scope for misery and folly! If they be not inhabited, what a waste of space! All great peoples are conservative. With stupidity and sound digestion, man may front much. Might and right do differ frightfully from hour to hour, but then centuries to try it in, they are found to be identical. The builder of this universe was wise, he planned all souls, all systems, planets, particles, the plan he shaped all worlds and eons by, was heaven's, was thy small 9 and 30 articles. The greatest event for the world is the arrival of a new and wise person. Reality, if rightly interpreted, is grander than fiction. Even in the meanest sorts of labor, the whole soul of a man is composed into a kind of real harmony the instant he sets himself to work. Song is the heroics of speech. Over the times thou hast no power. Solely over one man thou hast quite absolute power. Him redeem and make honest. Variety is the condition of harmony. Wealth of a man is the number of things which he loves and blesses which he is loved and blessed by. Let him who wants to move and convince others, be first moved and convinced himself. 9/10 of the miseries and vices of mankind proceed from idleness. The mystery of a person, indeed, is ever divine to him that has a sense for the godlike. All destruction, by violent revolution or however it be, is but new creation on a wider scale. No age seemed the age of romance to itself. Rightly viewed, no meanest object is insignificant. All objects are as windows through which the philosophic eye looks into infinitude itself. Be not a slave of words. The actual well seen is ideal. Evil, once manfully fronted, ceases to be evil. There is generous battle hope in place of dead, passive misery. The evil itself has become a kind of good. Generations are as the days of toilsome mankind. Death and birth are the vesper and the matin bells that summon mankind to sleep and to rise refreshed for new advancement. What the Father has made, the Son can make and enjoy, but has also work of his own appointed him. Thus all things wax and roll onwards, arts, establishments, opinions, nothing is ever completed, but ever completing. Shakespeare says, "We are creatures that look before and after, the more surprising that we do not look around a little, and see what is passing under our very eyes." There is no heroic poem in the world but is at bottom a biography, the life of a man. Poetry is the attempt which man makes to render his existence harmonious. Nature, after all, is still the grand agent in making poets. It's a man's sincerity and depth of vision that makes him a poet. Every poet, be his outward lot what it may, finds himself born in the midst of prose. He has to struggle from the littleness and obstruction of an actual world into the freedom and infinitude of an ideal. Piety does not mean that a man should make a sour face about things, and refuse to enjoy in moderation what his Maker has given. Without oblivion, there is no remembrance possible. When both oblivion and memory are wise, when the general soul of man is clear, melodious, true, there may come a modern Iliad as memorial of the past. Man, it is not thy works, which are mortal, infinitely little, and the greatest no greater than the least, but only the spirit thou workest in, that can have worth or continuance. Beautiful it is, and a gleam from the same eternal pole star visible amid the destinies of men, that all talent, all intellect, is in the first plane moral. What a world were this otherwise! Is not light grander than fire? How, without clothes, could we possess the master organ, soul's seat and true pineal gland of the body, social I mean a purse? Heroes have gone out, quacks have come in, the reign of quacks has not ended with the 19th century. The scepter is held with a firmer grasp, the empire has a wider boundary. We are all the slaves of quackery in one shape or another. Indeed, one portion of our being is always playing the successful quack to the other. Learn to be good readers, which is perhaps a more difficult thing than you imagine. Learn to be discriminative in your reading, to read faithfully, and with your best attention, all kinds of things which you have a real interest in, real, not an imaginary, and which you find to be really fit for what you are engaged in. Evil and good are everywhere, like shadow and substance, inseparable, for men, yet not hostile, only opposed. With respect to duels, indeed, I have my own ideas. Few things in this so surprising world strike me with more surprise. Two little visual spectra of men, hovering with insecure enough cohesion in the midst of the unfathomable, and to dissolve therein, at any rate, very soon. Make pause at the distance of 12 paces asunder, whirl around, and simultaneously by the cunningest mechanism, explode one another into dissolution, and, off-hand, become air, and non-extant the little spitfires. There are remedies for all things but death. I want to meet my God awake. A man ought to inquire and find out what he really and truly has an appetite for, what suits his constitution, and that, doctors tell him, is the very thing he ought to have in general. And so with books. Cease to brag to me of America, and its model institutions and constitutions. America, too, will have to strain its energies, crack its sinews, and all but break its heart, as the rest of us have had to do, in thousandfold wrestle with the pythons and mud demons, before it can become a habitation for the gods. No man is born without ambitious worldly desires. Roguery is thought by some to be cunning and laughable. It is neither, it is devilish. Insurrection, never so necessary, is a most sad necessity, and governors who wait for that to instruct them are surely getting into the fatalist course. The leafy blossoming present time springs from the whole past, remembered and unrememberable. If there be not a religious element in the relations of men, such relations are miserable and doomed to ruin. An everlasting lodestar, that beams the brighter in the heavens the darker here on earth grows the night. Laughter means sympathy. Woe to him who has no court of appeal against the world's judgment. Happy season of virtuous youth, when shame is still an impassable barrier, and the sacred air cities of hope have not shrunk into the mean clay hamlets of reality, and man, by his nature, is yet infinite and free. Is not Kant the materia prima of the devil, from which all falsehoods, imbecilities, abominations, body themselves, from which no true thing can come? For Kant is itself the properly a double distilled lie, the second power of a lie. The insignificant, the empty, is usually the loud, and after the manner of a drum, is louder even because of its emptiness. There is in man a higher than love of happiness, he can do without happiness, and instead thereof find blessedness. A true delineation of the smallest man is capable of interesting the greatest man. A man be the heavens ever praised, is sufficient for himself. All reform except a moral one will prove unavailing. All work of man is as the swimmer's, a vast ocean threatens to devour him, if he front it not bravely, it will keep its word. Time is the silent, never-resting thing, rolling, rushing on, swift, silent, like an all-embracing oceanteed, on which we in all the universe swim. We arc the miracle of miracles, the great inscrutable mystery of God. Man is a tool-using animal. Macaulay is well for a while, but one wouldn't live under Niagara. Caution is the lower story of prudence. Wondrous is the strength of cheerfulness, altogether past calculation its powers of endurance. Happy season of childhood! Kind nature, that art to all a bountiful mother, that visitest the poor man's hut with auroral radiance, and for thy nursling hast provided a soft swathing of love and infinite hope wherein he waxes and slumbers, danced round by sweetest dreams. The situation that has not its duty, its ideal, was never yet occupied by man. Yes, here, in this poor, miserable, hampered, despicable actual, wherein thou even now standest, here or nowhere is thy ideal, work it out therefrom, and, working, believe, live, be free. Fool! The ideal is in thyself. Whose school hours are all the days and nights of our existence. I too acknowledge the all-out omnipotence of early culture and nature. Hereby we have either a doddered dwarf bush, or a high-towering, wide-shadowing tree, either a sick yellow cabbage, or an edible luxuriant green one. Of a truth, it is the duty of all men, especially of all philosophers, to note down with accuracy the characteristic circumstances of their education, what furthered, what hindered, what in any way modified it. All that a university or final highest school can do for us is still but what the first school began doing: teach us to read. We learn to read in various languages, in various sciences, we learn the alphabet and letters of all manner of books. But the place where we are to get knowledge, even theoretic knowledge, is the books themselves. It depends on what we read, after all manner of professors have done their best for us. The true university of these days is a collection of books. Friend, hast thou considered the rugged, all-nourishing earth, as Sophocles well names her, how she feeds the sparrow on the housetop, much more her darling man? Earnestness alone makes life eternity. The latest gospel in this world is, know thy work and do it. Unity, agreement, is always silent or soft-voiced. It is only discord that loudly proclaims itself. Democracy will itself accomplish the salutary universal change from delusive to real, and make a new blessed world of us by and by. A dandy is a clothes-wearing man, a man whose trade, office, and existence consist in the wearing of clothes. Every faculty of his soul, spirit, person and purse is heroically consecrated to this one object, the wearing of clothes, wisely and well, so that, as others dress to live, he lives to dress. To say that we have a clear conscience is to utter a solecism. Had we never sinned we should have had no conscience. Were defeat unknown, neither would victory be celebrated by songs of triumph. It is a fact which escapes no one, that, generally speaking, whoso is acquainted with his worth has but a little stock to cultivate acquaintance with. Money, in truth, can do much, but it cannot do all. We must know the province of it, and confine it there, and even spurn it back when it wishes to get farther. The secret of business is to know something that nobody else knows. The greatest of faults, I should say, is to be conscious of none. We are to remember what an umpire nature is, what a greatness, composure of depth and tolerance there is in her. You take wheat to cast into the earth's bosom, your wheat may be mixed with chaff, chopped straw, barn sweepings, dust, and all imaginable rubbish. No matter. You cast it into the kind just earth, she grows the wheat, the whole rubbish she silently absorbs, shrouds it in, says nothing of the rubbish. The highest ensign that men ever met and embraced under, the cross itself, had no meaning save an accidental extrinsic one. Show me the man you honor, I know by that symptom, better than by any other, what kind of man you yourself are. For you show me there what your ideal of manhood is, what kind of man you long inexpressibly to be. Neither let mistakes and wrong directions, of which every man, in his studies and elsewhere, falls into many, discourage you. There is precious instruction to be got by finding that we are wrong. Let a man try faithfully, manfully to be right, he will grow daily more and more right. It is, at bottom, the condition which all men have to cultivate themselves. Our very walking is an incessant falling, a falling and a catching of ourselves before we come actually to the pavement. It is emblematic of all things a man does. And there are Ben Jonson and William Shakespeare in wit combat, sure enough, Ben bearing down like a mighty Spanish warship, fraught with all learning and artillery, Shakespeare whisking away from him, whisking right through him, athwart the big bulk and timbers of him, like a miraculous celestial lightship, woven all of sheet lightning and sunbeams. Lord Bacon could as easily have created the planets as he could have written Hamlet. It is now almost my sole rule of life to clear myself of cants and formulas, as of poisonous Nessus shirts. He that works and does some poem, not he that merely says one, is worthy of the name of poet. The eye of the intellect sees in all objects what it brought with it the means of seeing. I came hither, Cragen Pudic, solely with the design to simplify my way of life and to secure the independence through which I could be enabled to remain true to myself. Are not our greatest men as good as lost? The men that walk daily among us, warming us, feeding us, walk shrouded in darkness, mere mythic men. A false man found a religion. Why, a false man cannot build a brick house. We have chosen Mahomet not as the most eminent prophet, but as the one we are freest to speak of. He is by no means the truest of prophets, but I do esteem him a true one. What is philosophy but a continual battle against custom? Of all God's creatures, man alone is poor. The first duty of man is that of subduing fear. To each is given a certain inward talent, a certain outward environment or fortune, to each by wisest combination of these two, a certain maximum capacity. The mathematics of high achievement. Who is there that, in logical words, can express the effect music has on us? Quackery gives birth to nothing, gives death to all things. See deep enough, and you see musically. I know so little about any history. How little do I know even about the history of myself? The times are very bad. Very well, you are there to make them better. There must be a new world if there is to be any world at all. These days of universal death must be days of universal new birth, if the ruin is not to be total and final. It is time to make the dullest man consider, and ask himself, whence he came, whither he is bound. Hunger whets everything, especially suspicion and indignation. Man makes circumstances, and spiritually as well as economically, is the artificer of his own fortune. Just in the ratio knowledge increases, faith decreases. In a symbol there is concealment and yet revelation. Here therefore, by silence and by speech acting together, comes a double significance. A very sea of thought, neither calm nor clear, if you will, yet wherein the toughest pearl diver may dive to his utmost depth, and return not only with Sirach but with true Orients. Terror itself, when once grown transcendental, becomes a kind of courage, as frost sufficiently intense, according to the poet Milton, will burn. Taste, if it mean anything but a paltry connoisseurship, must mean a general susceptibility to truth and nobleness, a sense to discern, and a heart to love and reverence all beauty, order, goodness, wheresoever, or in whatsoever forms and accompaniments they are to be seen. This surely implies, as its chief condition, not any given external rank or situation, but a finely gifted mind, purified into harmony with itself, into keenness and justness of vision, above all, kindled into love and generous admiration. Silence, the great empire of silence, higher than all stars, deeper than the kingdom of death. It alone is great, all else is small. There is a majesty and mystery in nature, take her as you will. The essence of poetry comes breathing to a mind that feels from every province of her empire. We observe with confidence that the truly strong mind, view it as intellect or morality, or under any other aspect, is nowise the mind acquainted with its strength, that here the sign of health is unconsciousness. Consider in fact, a body of 658 miscellaneous persons, set to consult about business, with 27 millions, mostly fools, assiduously listening to them, and checking and criticizing them. Was there ever, since the world began, will there ever be till the world end, any business accomplished in these circumstances? How indestructibly the good grows, and propagates itself, even among the weedy entanglements of evil. What a wretched thing is all fame! A renown of the highest sort endures, say, for 2,000 years. And then? Why, then, a fathomless eternity swallows it. Work for eternity, not the meager rhetorical eternity of the periodical critics, but for the real eternity wherein dwelleth the divine. Money will buy money's worth, but the thing men call fame, what is it? Eyes bright, with many tears, behind them. Not one false man but doth uncountable evil. Thought will not work except in silence. O time, time! How it brings forth and devours! And the roaring flood of existence rushes on forever similar, forever changing. Time has only a relative existence. What this country needs is a man who knows God other than by hearsay. To the wisest man, wide as is his vision, nature remains of quite infinite depth, of quite infinite expansion, and all experience thereof limits itself to some few computed centuries and measured square miles. Perfect ignorance is quiet, perfect knowledge is quiet, not so the transition from the former to the latter. It is no very good symptom, either of nations or individuals, that they deal much in vaticination. Happy men are full of the present, for its bounty suffices them, and wise men also, for its duties engage them. Our grand business undoubtedly is not to see what lies dimly at a distance, but to do what clearly lies at hand. Poverty, we may say, surrounds a man with ready-made barriers, which if they do mournfully gall and hamper, do at least prescribe for him, and force on him, a sort of course and goal, a safe and beaten, though a circuitous, course. A great part of his guidance is secure against fatal error, is withdrawn from his control. The rich, again, has his whole life to guide, without goal or barrier, save of his own choosing, and, tempted, is too likely to guide it ill. I think Scandinavian paganism, to us here, is more interesting than any other. It is, for one thing, the latest. It continued in these regions of Europe till the 11th century. 800 years ago the Norwegians were still worshippers of Odin. It is interesting also as the creed of our fathers, the men whose blood still runs in our veins, whom doubtless we still resemble in so many ways. Every man has a coward and hero in his soul. A collection of books is the best of all universities. There are depths in man that go to the lowest hell, and heights that reach the highest heaven, for are not both heaven and hell made out of him? Everlasting miracle and mystery that he is. Leaders, captains of industry. The thing is not only to avoid error, but to attain immense masses of truth. The genuine essence of truth never dies. In the huge mass of evil as it rolls and swells, there is ever some good working toward deliverance and triumph. The end of man is action. No good book, or good thing of any sort, shows its best face at first. There is a perennial nobleness, and even sacredness, in work. Were he never so benighted, forgetful of his high calling, there is always hope in a man that actually and earnestly works. In idleness alone there is perpetual despair. All work is as seed sown, it grows and spreads, and sows itself anew. Wonderful force of public opinion. We must act and walk in all points as it prescribes, follow the traffic it bids us, realize the sum of money, the degree of influence it expects of us, or we shall be lightly esteemed. Certain mouthfuls of articulate wind will be blown at us, and this what mortal courage confront? Teaching school is but another word for sure and not very slow destruction. The glory of a workman, still more of a master workman, that he does his work well, ought to be his most precious possession, like the honor of a soldier, dearer to him than life. To me the universe was all void of life, of purpose, of volition, even of hostility. It was one huge, dead, immeasurable steam engine, rolling on, in its dead indifference, to grind me limb from limb. O vast gloomy, solitary Golgotha, and mill of death! Why was the living banished thither companionless, conscious? Why, if there is no devil, nay, unless the devil is your God? Look around you. Your world hosts are all in mutiny, in confusion, destitution, on the eve of fiery wreck and madness. They will not march farther for you, on the sixpence a day in supply-demand principle, they will not, nor ought they, nor can they. Ye shall reduce them to order, begin reducing them. To order, to just subordination, noble loyalty in return for noble guidance. Their souls are driven nigh mad, let yours be sane and ever saner. Nature alone is antique, and the oldest art a mushroom. Pin your faith to no one's sleeves, haven't you 2 eyes of your own? Does it ever give thee pause that men used to have a soul? Not by hearsay alone, or as a figure of speech, but as a truth that they knew and acted upon. Verily it was another world then, but yet it is a pity we have lost the tidings of our souls. We shall have to go in search of them again, or worse in all ways shall befall us. There is but one thing without honor, smitten with eternal barrenness, inability to do or to be, insincerity, unbelief. The greatest mistake is to imagine that we never err. Histories are a kind of distilled newspapers. It is part of my creed that the only poetry is history, could we tell it right. The wise man is but a clever infant, spelling letters from a hieroglyphical prophetic book, the lexicon of which lies in eternity. Experience is the best of schoolmasters, only the school fees are heavy. Armed soldier, terrible as death, relentless as doom, doing God's judgment on the enemies of God. It is a phenomenon not of joyful nature, no, but of awful, to be looked at with pious terror and awe. The steam engine I call fire demon and great, but it is nothing to the invention of fire. Freedom is the one purport, wisely aimed at, or unwisely, of all man's struggles, toilings and sufferings, in this earth. We call that fire of the black thundercloud electricity, and lecture learnedly about it, and grind the like of it out of glass and silk. But what is it? What made it? Whence comes it? Whither goes it? A witty statesman said, "You might prove anything by figures." Genius, which means transcendent capacity of taking trouble, first of all. All true work is sacred. In all true work, were it but true hand work, there is something of divineness. Labor, wide as the earth, has its summit in heaven. Properly speaking, all true work is religion. A judicious man uses statistics, not to get knowledge, but to save himself from having ignorance foisted upon him. We are not altogether here to tolerate. We are here to resist, to control and vanquish withal. Out of the lowest depths there is a path to the loftiest heights. The coldest word was once a glowing new metaphor. The meaning of song goes deep. Who in logical words can explain the effect music has on us? A kind of inarticulate, unfathomable speech, which leads us to the edge of the infinite, and lets us for a moment gaze into that. The person who cannot wonder is but a pair of spectacles behind which there is no eye. A vein of poetry exists in the hearts of all men. He who would write heroic poems should make his whole life a heroic poem. A thinking man is the worst enemy the Prince of Darkness can have. Every time such an one announces himself, I doubt not there runs a shudder through the nether empire, and new emissaries are trained with new tactics, to, if possible, entrap and hoodwink and handcuff him. Why did not somebody teach me the constellations, and make me at home in the starry heavens, which are always overhead, and which I don't half know to this day? Fire is the best of servants, but what a master! Know what thou canst work at, and work at it like a Hercules. Neither had what of the steam engine a heroic origin, any kindred with the princes of this world. The princes of this world were shooting their partridges, while this man with blackened fingers, with grim brow, was searching out, in his workshop, the fire secret. Cash payment is not the sole nexus of man with man. The barrenest of all mortals is the sentimentalist. One seems to believe almost all that they believe, and when they stop short and call it a religion, and you pass on, and call it only a reminiscence of one, should you not part with the kiss of peace? Philosophy dwells aloft in the temple of science, the divinity of its inmost shrine. Her dictates descend among men, but she herself descends not. Whoso would behold her must climb with long and laborious effort, nay, still linger in the forecourt, till manifold trial have proved him worthy of admission into the interior solemnities. In private life I never knew anyone interfere with other people's disputes, but he heartily repented of it. Habit is the deepest law of human nature. Thought, true labor of any kind, highest virtue itself, is it not the daughter of pain? I grow daily to honor facts more and more, and theory less and less. If I had my way, the world would hear a pretty stern command, exit Christ. Laissez-faire, supply and demand. One begins to be weary of all that. Leave all to egotism, to ravenous greed of money, of pleasure, of applause. It is the gospel of despair. Biography is the most universally pleasant and profitable of all reading. The greatest fault is to be conscious of none. The king is the man who can. Give us, oh give us the man who sings at his work. Be his occupation what it may, he is equal to any of those who follow the same pursuit in silent sullenness. He will do more in the same time. He will do it better. He will persevere longer. One is scarcely sensible to fatigue while he marches to music. The very stars are said to make harmony as they revolve in their spheres. Skepticism is not intellectual only, it is moral also, a chronic atrophying disease of the whole soul. A person with a clear purpose will make progress, even on the roughest road. A person with no purpose will make no progress, even on the smoothest road. Acorns are planted silently by some unnoticed breeze. Faith is loyalty to some inspired teacher, some spiritual hero. The deadliest sin were the consciousness of no sin. He that has a secret to hide should not only hide it but hide that he has to hide it. Oh, heaven, it is mysterious, it is awful to consider that we not only carry a future ghost within us, but are, in very deed, ghosts. There is often more spiritual force in a proverb than in whole philosophical systems. What are your historical facts? Still more your biographical. Wilt thou know a man by stringing together bead-rolls of what thou namest facts? Not on morality, but on cookery, let us build our stronghold, there brandishing our frying pan, as censer, let us offer sweet incense to the devil, and live at ease on the fat things he has provided for his elect. The dust of controversy is merely the falsehood flying off. Great men are the commissioned guides of mankind, who rule their fellows because they are wiser. A force as of madness in the hands of reason has done all that was ever done in the world. A man perfects himself by working. It is great, and there is no other greatness to make one nook of God's creation more fruitful, better, more worthy of God, to make some human heart a little wiser, manlier, happier, more blessed. Parties on the back of parties, at war with the world and with each other. Every human being has a right to hear what otherwise human beings have spoken to him. It is one of the rights of man, a very cruel injustice if you deny it to a man. Democracy is, by the nature of it, a self-canceling business, and gives in the long run a net result of zero. A fundamental mistake to call vehemence and rigidity strength. A man is not strong who takes convulsion fits, though 6 men cannot hold him then. He that can walk under the heaviest weight without staggering, he is the strong man. A man who cannot hold his peace, till the time come for speaking and acting, is no right man. A man's religion consists, not of the many things he is in doubt of and tries to believe, but of the few he is assured of and has no need of effort for believing. A stammering man is never a worthless one. Physiology can tell you why. It is an excess of sensibility to the presence of his fellow creature, that makes him stammer. This London city, with all of its houses, palaces, steam engines, cathedrals, and huge immeasurable traffic and tumult, what is it but a thought, but millions of thoughts made into one, a huge immeasurable spirit of a thought, embodied in brick, in iron, smoke, dust, palaces, parliaments, hackney coaches, Catherine docks, and the rest of it. Not a brick was made, but some man had to think of the making of that brick. Speech is silver, silence is golden. He that can work is born to be king of something. Nothing builds self-esteem and self-confidence like accomplishment. Once the mind has been expanded by a big idea, it will never go back to its original state. War is a quarrel between 2 thieves too cowardly to fight their own battle, therefore they take boys from one village and another village, stick them into uniforms, equip them with guns, and let them loose like wild beasts against one another. Wonder is the basis of worship. Men's hearts ought not to be set against one another, but set with one another and all against evil only. All deep things are song. It seems somehow the very central essence of us, song, as if all the rest were but rapids and hulls. No good book or good thing of any kind shows it best face at first. No, the most common quality of a true work of art that has excellence and depth, is that at first sight it produces a certain disappointment. Permanence, perseverance and persistence in spite of all obstacles, discouragements, and impossibilities, it is this, that in all things distinguishes the strong soul from the weak. A strong mind always hopes, and has always cause to hope. Silence is more eloquent than words. The soul gives unity to what it looks at with love. The weakest living creature, by concentrating his powers on a single object, can accomplish something. The strongest, by dispensing his over many, may fail to accomplish anything. The drop, by continually falling, bores its passage through the hardest rock. The hasty torrent rushes over it with hideous uproar, and leaves no trace behind. The best lesson which we get from the tragedy of Carlyle is that Hussein and his companions were rigid believers in God. They illustrated that the numerical superiority does not count when it comes to the truth and the falsehood. The victory of Hussein, despite his minority, marvels me. History is a mighty dramos, enacted upon the theatre of times, with suns for lamps and eternity for a background. True friends, like ivy and the wall, both stand together, and together fall. The fearful unbelief is unbelief in yourself. Success in life, in anything, depends upon the number of persons that one can make himself agreeable to. To know, to get into the truth of anything, is ever a mystic art, of which the best logics can but babble on the surface. Of all the things which man can do or make here below, by far the most momentous, wonderful, and worthy are the things we call books. The word of Muhammad is a voice direct from nature's own heart, all else is wind in comparison. Oblivion is the dark page, whereon memory writes her light beam characters, and makes them legible. Were it all light, nothing could be read there, any more than if it were all darkness. O poor mortals, how ye make this earth bitter for each other. Painful for a person is rebellious independence. Only in loving companionship with his associates does a person feel safe. Only in reverently bowing down before the higher does a person feel exalted. My books are friends that never fail me. We have our little theory on all human and divine things. Poetry, the workings of genius itself, which, in all times, with one or another meaning, has been called inspiration, and held to be mysterious and inscrutable, is no longer without its scientific exposition. The building of the lofty rhyme is like any other masonry or bricklaying. We have theories of its rise, height, decline and fall, which latter, it would seem, is now near, among all people. The orator persuades and carries all with him, he knows not how. The rhetorician can prove that he ought to have persuaded and carried all with him. Music is well said to be the speech of angels. In fact, nothing among the utterances allowed to man is felt to be so divine. It brings us near to the infinite. Great is journalism. Is not every able editor a ruler of the world, being the persuader of it? Popular opinion is the greatest lie in the world. In books lies the sole fo the whole pastime. Virtue is like health, the harmony of the whole man. Men do less than they ought, unless they do all they can. Tell a person they are brave and you help them become so. Work is the grand cure of all the maladies and miseries that ever beset mankind. Today is not yesterday, we ourselves change. How can our works and thoughts, if they are always to be the fittest, continue always the same? Change, indeed, is painful, yet ever needful, and if memory have its force and worth, so also has hope. The first purpose of clothes was not worn for decency, but ornament. Among wild people, we find tattooing and painting even prior to clothes. The first spiritual want of a barbarous man is decoration, as indeed we still see among the barbarous classes in civilized countries. A man lives by believing something. The present is the living sum total of the whole past. Only the person of worth can recognize the worth in others. That there should one man die ignorant who had capacity for knowledge, this I call a tragedy. History is the essence of innumerable biographies. Heroism is the divine relation which, in all times, unites a great man to other men. Universal history, the history of what man has accomplished in this world, is at bottom the history of the great men who have worked here. Stop a moment, cease your work, and look around you. Neither in tailoring nor in legislating does man proceed by mere accident. Every noble crown is, and on earth will forever be, a crown of thorns. A good book is the purest essence of a human soul. Without kindness there can be no true joy. There are but two ways of paying debt: increase of industry in raising income, increase of thrift in laying out. The first sin in our universe was Lucifer's self-conceit. Worship is transcendent wonder. Weak eyes are fondest of glittering objects. What an enormous magnifier is tradition! How a thing grows in the human memory and in the human imagination, when love, worship, and all that lies in the human heart, is there to encourage it. These Arabs, the man Muhammad, and that 1 century, is it not as if a spark had fallen, one spark, on a world of what proves explosive powder, blazes heaven high from Delhi to Granada? I said, the great man was always as lightning out of heaven, the rest of men waited for him like fuel, and then they too would flame. The lightning spark of thought generated in the solitary mind awakens its likeness in another mind. Trust not the heart of that man for whom old clothes are not venerable. A great man shows his greatness by the way he treats little men. The best effect of any book is that it excites the reader to self-activity. The crash of the whole solar and stellar systems could only kill you once. Ill health, of body or of mind, is defeat. Health alone is victory. Let all men, if they can manage it, contrive to be healthy. The universe is but one vast symbol of God. Who is it that loves me and will love me forever with an affection which no chance, no misery, no crime of mine can do away? It is you, my mother. For every 100 men who can stand adversity there is only one who can withstand prosperity. If hero means sincere man, why may not every one of us be a hero? Speech is of time, silence is of eternity. When we can drain the ocean into mill ponds, and bottle up the force of gravity, to be sold by retail, in gas jars, then may we hope to comprehend the infinitudes of man's soul under formulas of profit and loss, and rule over this too, as over a patent engine, by checks, and valves, and balances. Let one who wants to move and convince others, first be convinced and move themselves. If a person speaks with genuine earnestness the thoughts, the emotion and the actual condition of their own heart, others will listen because we all are knit together by the tie of sympathy. The lies, Western slander, which well-meaning zeal has heaped round this man, Muhammad, are disgraceful to ourselves only. Do not be embarrassed by your mistakes. Nothing can teach us better than our understanding of them. This is one of the best ways of self-education. Every noble work is at first impossible. Of all your troubles, great and small, the greatest are the ones that don't happen at all. Of all the paths a man could strike into, there is, at any given moment, a best path. A thing which, here and now, it were of all things wisest for him to do. To find this path, and walk in it, is the one thing needful for him. It is a mathematical fact that the casting of this pebble from my hand alters the center of gravity of the universe. No pressure, no diamonds. Instead of saying that man is the creature of circumstance, it would be nearer the mark to say that man is the architect of circumstance. It is character which builds an existence out of circumstance. From the same materials one man builds palaces, another hovels, one warehouses, another villas. Bricks and mortar are mortar and bricks until the architect can make them something else. It is the first of all problems for a man to find out what kind of work he is to do in this universe. If Jesus Christ were to come today, people would not even crucify him. They would ask him to dinner, and hear what he had to say, and make fun of it. He who has no vision of eternity has no hold on time. Endurance is patience concentrated.